We're live.
Ooh.
This is it, right? Yes. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this great event. We're just gonna be chit chatting here for like a couple of minutes, I guess,
Mm.
because we're gonna, well, the people kind of enter the stream. I don't want to wait too long, but I also don't want to jump right in while people still get set up. Find that cast or airplay button to put this on their TV or whatever.
Yeah. So thanks, Paulus, for having me here.
Yeah,
We're streaming live from Paulus' home.
yeah, for my living room. That's great.
A
Cleaned
little
up.
bit of a little bit of setup going on this morning here, and
Yeah,
yeah, here we are.
yeah. So yeah, if you we're coming live to you from Irvine, California. So that's just south of LA. Yeah. So, but Stefan, you're not from this region, right? Where you came
No,
from?
yeah, no, I flew. I'm working from Switzerland for Nabukasa, right? And yeah, I flew into Irvine yesterday, and yeah, uh,
Yeah. Here we are.
for this event, and then I also will go to San Diego to the Connectivity Standards Alliance member meeting.
Right. The Matter party, right?
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
the yeah. Everybody's flying down to San Diego next week from the Alliance
Mhm.
to, you know, hang out in person, discuss stuff.
Exactly. And there will be also Blockfest apparently. So where even like still like devices still being developed, getting like tested. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So that's also where we are gonna bring our Matter integration and see,
Mm-hmm.
is it gonna work?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we just let it go.
Yeah, sure. Let's go
All
ahead.
right. Let me see. Sorry. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody to the Matter in Home Assistant workshop. We're going to talk first today what is Matter. So we're going to give a brief overview of like how the technology works, how it kind of got together, and highlight some of the things that think is very cool about Matter. Um, the second part of the stream, we're actually going to do a workshop where we have been working very hard with members of our community on creating experimental Matter integration for Home Assistant. This means that Home Assistant will be able to speak to other Meta devices on your network. And so we shared this like 2 weeks ago, I think, or 3 weeks ago, a set of things you could have, like, you had to buy like an ESP32, you had that Home Assistant OS installed. If you have all these requirements ready and set today, you will be able to follow along, get Matter installed in your house, get an ESP32 turned into a Matter Lite that you then control and pair into Matter in Home Assistant. So it's going to be really cool. But first, who are we? So I'm Paulus Schoutse. I'm the founder of Home Assistant. Um, I started Home Assistant 9 years ago, and we've been hacking on locally controlled, privacy-focused home automation. I've been doing it for 9 years now, almost. So yeah, it's been a while, but it's still fun. It's definitely things like Matter will keep it fun. Um, Stefan,
Yep.
what's your role?
Yeah, so I work most of the time on the Home Assistant operating system, which basically enables Home Assistant out of the box experience. And I also work quite a bit on Yellow, on the project Yellow. That's the hardware we are seeing here.
Cool. So for the people that are tuning in today, to just because they care about Matter and not per se about Home Assistant, I do want to give like a quick 2 minute introduction about what Home Assistant is, how we work, and why it works so well. So Home Assistant is open source home automation platform that you can run in your house for free. You can install it on a Raspberry Pi. We have off the shelf hardware like the Home Assistant Yellow in front of us, and it's uh, it's something that everybody worldwide is using it. So we estimate right now that there's around like 500,000 Home Assistant installations worldwide. Now we give this away for free to the community, but at some point Home Assistant was growing so big that basically we couldn't maintain this anymore in our spare times outside of our normal jobs. So what I did is that besides Home Assistant, I also started a company called Nabukasa, which mission is to further develop Home Assistant. So we did this by launching a cloud service that provides certain extra features like remote connectivity and integration with voice assistants, text to speech. And these things are things that people can set up themselves for Home Assistant, but they can also just pay us a small amount a month. We do it for them, and with this money, we hire developers and we are further developing Home Assistant. So right now, Home Assistant has 16 people working full time, and we work on maintaining the project. We are like, working with the community, adding support for new stuff, including, for example, Matter. But we also will participate or like talk to people in the industry to help promote like our vision of like the open home, where like your smart home should be local, your smart home should be private. It shouldn't be breaking when some vendor goes bankrupt, for example. If you want to like stay up to date of like Home Assistant, all the stuff that we're working on, we have a newsletter nowadays called Building the Open Home. If you haven't heard of it, you want to subscribe, go to homeassistant.io/newsletter, or just check the homepage. There's a link somewhere there as well. And then once a month, we will send you a free newsletter with the latest and coolest stuff. Cool. So, Matter. I think that the first thing we want to really do is just talk about like what Matter is at a very high level. So, Matter is a smart home standard which allows you, to control a wide variety of IoT devices. And actually, Matter is, in the way the devices it supports, the way it actually does, it's based on like Zigbee, which is another smart home standard. And what this means is that, in Matter, there's the notion of a light. Then a smart home controller like Home Assistant, but also Apple or Amazon or Google, which will be able to speak Matter to that light bulb and say, hey, light bulb, are you on? Are you off? Light bulb, turn on, turn off, or change the brightness. And a light bulb itself can say, I can turn on, I can turn off, but maybe it supports color temperature, maybe it supports brightness, and all these things are kind of packed into Matter. Now, that is the top layer of Matter. The lower layers of Matter, we'll get into like how these communication is actually happening. We'll talk to on the next slide. But I think that one thing that's just really important here is that Matter operates without a cloud, right? This is a connectivity standard that you run inside your house. It means that there is no cloud necessary. And whoever runs the controller, like the Matter network, is in charge of where the data goes next. So if you use Home Assistant for your Matter network, your data will stay local because there is no cloud where we store data. If you run an Amazon or a Google network, it is, although of course they haven't released it yet, but my assumption is that that data is going to be stored in the cloud. Apple, I actually don't know if they do, maybe not. Anything else you think we should mention here?
Yeah, no, I think the local thing, that's a local standard, is really important, right? And and also the fact that all these vendors basically are working on kind of building that and backing that standard, right?
Right. And that's actually a nice segue into our next slide of why we think Matter is going to be very successful. Matter has an open source reference implementation. And this means that there are people from Google and Apple and Amazon and so many other companies right now all collaborating together, fixing bugs, creating pull requests, reviewing each other's code together to build a single open source reference implementation of how Matter will work. And this standard, this open source project, is the same open source project that we are now running in Home Assistant, and that we'll show you later, but it's also the same source code that Google is going to use and probably Apple is going to use. And that means that if there's a single way of doing something, this is why like the Linux kernel is so successful. We all have the same copy of the Linux kernel, and as long as it's kept up to date, all the stuff that runs on top of it is more or less compatible. Now, if you think about it, the fact that before Matter has an open source reference implementation, the other two smart home standards that run local, Zigbee and Z-Wave, do not have one. There is one for Z-Wave that we are building. So Dominique is building it called Z-Wave.js, and with Nabukasa, we actually hired Dominique to work on this full time to turn this into the reference Z-Wave implementation. But we're the only company out there investing in open source Z-Wave. For Zigbee, there's many different controllers available. Some are open source, maintained by members of the Home Assistant community. Others are closed source. But there is no a single implementation where everybody is rallying around to make sure that it's compatible and bug free. This means there's a lot of wasted resources, right? Because, for example, say you want to create a light bulb that is connected. Now, with Zigbee or Z-Wave, you actually have to create software that can do Z-Wave or Zigbee. And you're creating software, you're going to have bugs, the development costs of your light bulbs are high, it's messy. With Matter, there's already implementation for a wide variety of chipsets that can be used in smart products. Some of them we have here today, which we're going to use for our workshop, like the ESP32. And that means that if you are going to create a light bulb that's connected, you could just use one of those chips, install the Matter software, and a light manufacturer can just focus on the thing they do best, which is making light bulbs, the actual hardware. They don't have to maintain that software.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that this is one like SDK which all these chips are supported with was also one of the reasons why Matter got delayed a bit. It kind of got a little bit too popular, and then they added so many chipsets to support with that one SDK. And yeah, I think it's a really good thing, right, to have this common thing.
Yeah.
But it was also apparently a bit of a challenge to get then really all these chipsets really running with this SDK. But at the end of the day, I think it's a really good thing to have a common reference implementation which everybody uses and fixes bugs and makes sure that it works. Yeah. I've seen that some said we should boost audio a bit. I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is the volume. I think that's on the back. Is this better for the people that were complaining? I don't know. Zach?
So Zach, let me know. Yeah.
Is this
Yeah, just write me again and let me know. Otherwise, we bump it up a bit more.
Yeah. This is why you need to do
a bit more. Okay.
This is why you need to do audio checks. Yeah, sorry for the people that had increased the volume and now our volume is louder and it's blasting through their living room. All right. Next one is, oh yeah. The other cool thing about Matter is that we can speak Matter everywhere. Where previous smart home standards like Zigbee and Z-Wave, they were limited to the Z-Wave mesh network was being used to send Z-Wave packets, and the Zigbee mesh network was being used to send the Zigbee packets. Now, with Matter, we do not have this problem because Matter will also work over your normal network. So if you have Wi-Fi or if you have Ethernet, you're able to speak Matter directly to a Wi-Fi light bulb, for example. So instead of having multiple protocols across different connectivity like ways of like communicating, there's a single one.
Yeah, and I think that's a game changer compared to existing smart home standards. So when you look at Z-Wave or Zigbee, they all are based on a certain radio technology, and the network is kind of part of that whole stack. Matter is really different because it sets up on IP, right? And you don't need to use Thread or Wi-Fi. It can also be Ethernet, and it's also not mandatory that you basically onboard a device through Matter. So, for instance, if you have already a device on your Wi-Fi network, like let's say a TV, that device can then say, I'm actually also Matter capable, and you can commission it without needing to, press a reset button or something. It's already on the network, so you just talk to it using that Matter smart home standard. So I think that's a huge game changer for smart homes, that we finally basically have a common application level protocol. So really a smart home standard which works with existing IP devices, right? Yeah. Because right now every Wi-Fi bulb speaks its own protocol. There was just no standard really to get that done.
well, at least a standard that like people liked and
Yeah,
were rallying
yeah,
around,
exactly.
right? So we see Thread here, and so Thread is a low-power mesh networking technology that works with IP addresses. And what makes Thread so special is that it's not tied to Matter. Thread is a um, like it doesn't matter what goes over it. Just like with your Wi-Fi router, right? You can connect with your iPhone to a Wi-Fi router created by Google, and you can just browse the web. You're not limited to which applications you run or all these things. There's true freedom. So this is the same with a thread network. So on a thread network, you can have different applications running. You could, for example, use HomeKit, which uses thread. You could have a meta network. You can have multiple meta networks, and all these different things communicate over thread. And the devices that are passing around the thread packets might not understand it, but it's fine. They will still relay it. So to have your thread network connected to your Wi-Fi network, you need these devices that are called thread border routers. Now, this is a screenshot from Google I/O from a few months ago from Google because I stole this one from them because this was by far the best picture I found. So what you can see here is that you will have multiple devices in your house that are a thread border router. This means that whenever a thread device sends a message, the moment it gets to a thread border router, it can see, is this message meant for a device that's on my Wi-Fi network? Then the thread border router will send it to the actual device on the Wi-Fi network. And it works the other way around. On the Wi-Fi network, it will thread border routers exposes your thread devices as devices. So for example, Home Assistant just does a scan of the network and it will find the thread devices because the thread border routers tell us to. And you might not know, but you might already have devices in your house that will be turned into thread border routers when Matter launches. So the one that is already working today as a thread border router is the Apple HomePod because they use this for the HomeKit stuff. But I think Google Wi-Fi has thread chips in it. Definitely the Nest Hub will get a software upgrade to enable this functionality.
The second gen for sure, yeah.
Yeah, the second gen. Yeah, I think the first gen it was not there. But this means also, I think Samsung said that they're going to add a lot of thread chips to their product so that like any product that's Wi-Fi connected, if it also has a thread chip, it can connect as a border router. And what this means is that devices that are connected to power and connected to Wi-Fi, they have a lot more range to send signals very far. So they can connect to your Wi-Fi router, which might be on the other side of your house. If you have a small sensor, let's say a motion sensor, it only needs to send a signal to a thread border router device in that same room, and after that it goes over Wi-Fi and it's fast and fine. So yeah, thread is really going to be helpful, and it's really cool to see that Matter has adopted this. The history of thread is also super interesting because this actually started with Google Nest. I think when Google Nest came out, it had a Zigbee chip in it, but then they didn't like Zigbee, so they decided to create Thread and Weave on top. And then Thread stayed around. Weave never really got adopted outside of Nest. And then now, I think it's like 10 years or something later, an actual smart home standard adopted by the industry might start actually using Thread. So I think this is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Thread is here really to basically bring this low power RF systems basically onto the IP level, right? And then from there on, it's basically Matter talking to these devices, and they are then basically on pair with like a device which is connected over Wi-Fi or Ethernet. So Thread is really kind of the enabler there for this. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let me see. Right. So the other thing that is really nice about Matter is that it's not just, hey, here is a application library of like how you describe a light bulb. It's not a mesh network because it uses Thread, but actually a lot of thought has also gone into some extra features where previous smart home standards or APIs were lacking. And these features are kind of built out of a necessity, or otherwise these companies probably wouldn't collaborate and share resources. And so we're going to go over a few of those. But the one that is really cool is that it uses Bluetooth for commissioning and for pairing a network, for pairing a Matter device into your what's called a Matter fabric, or like it's your mesh network that runs your Matter. Now, um, what is nice about Bluetooth is that with Bluetooth you can use your phone. It's going to be all phone based. You will scan a QR code on the device, or you'll have a certain number you enter, a PIN code. This will allow the phone to connect to the device over Bluetooth, then send it the credentials how to get connected to either Wi-Fi or to the thread network. And once it's connected to that network, then the device can be pulled into Matter and be added to your fabric. And this is an experience that is really nice, where you don't have to like open your, with previous smart home standards, you had to like open your network for pairing. Then you had to like, if it was a light bulb, you had to like turn it on and off 5 times in a certain rhythm or something to get this pairing going. And so with Matter, that will not be a problem. So this is another thing that we're actually really excited by. That's also why for today's workshop, you had to have Bluetooth in your Home Assistant installation, because that will allow us to pair directly from the hub. Now, in the future, we do not expect you to require Bluetooth inside Home Assistant, because you're not going to carry the hub around your house to pair devices. Instead, you're going to take your phone, go to a device, and then add it to your network.
Yeah. Yeah, and the phone also allows you to scan a barcode. So a lot of these devices, they will come with a QR code for pairing, or it's basically mandated that these come with this QR code. And so, of course, what we will do here is basically just use the payload of that QR code. But in the final setup, the way it should work is that you take your mobile phone and you scan that QR code, and then it directly submits that to the server or to whoever is then doing the commissioning, basically.
Right. And so until now, we've talked about like a single Matter network running over Thread. We already mentioned that Thread is agnostic. It doesn't really care what Matter is. It will just forward the packages. And what this unlocks, and this is really cool, is that Matter devices can join multiple Matter fabrics, multiple Matter networks. So this, for example, means that if you for the Home Assistant, this is really good for us, because we are really, our target audience is really the outgrowers. So, nobody starts their smart home journey with Home Assistant. Instead, you started with a Google or Apple or an Amazon. Eventually, you run into their limitations. Maybe you want to see the history of your smart home. Maybe you want to use that data for something else. Maybe you want to, you have a cool project in mind. You want to create graphs. There's many reasons like why you, or if you, of course, if you want your data local. Why did I not mention that as the first one? But anyway, you'll run into limitations of like the other implementations, but you don't have to start over. What will happen is that, once you start using Home Assistant, you can share from the Google Home app your Matter devices to Home Assistant. And this is something Google already actually has posted videos and screenshots of how this is going to work. So basically, there will just be a share button on your Android phone, and you can share either a link or a QR code, or you can share directly to an app where you want it to be added to the fabric. So this might become the Home Assistant app where you can just share your Matter device too. And besides trying out different controllers, another cool feature of this is if you have roommates, you could have your living room be paired to everybody's individual Matter networks. So you could still have, for example, your Home Assistant installation control your room and your living room without the other people forcing them to use, they can use whatever technology they want to use. And I think the spec says that like light bulbs or whatever devices have to support 5 different networks at launch, right, to get certified.
I think that's the minimum. Yeah, they kind of require you to be a Matter certified. I think, well, it's also not final, right, and all that. So yeah. But that's it seems that multiple networks are basically mandated to be supported. So I think when we first looked into Matter and heard that this multi-admin thing is coming along, the fear was that, well, probably like a cheap light bulb only supports one network. But it seems that this is really kind of enforced by the standard that multiple networks are supported. And I think that's really good, because if yeah, in the end, if you only support one or some devices only support one or two, then it's kind of, you end up in the same situation again, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, for me, I think that really the multi-admin feature is a big game changer as well in Matter. I think that's yeah, it will really help for the standard to get adopted, because it is it's a new feature which other smart home standards just don't have, right?
Right, and I think also what is really going to be helpful with the multi-admin feature is that it's a way to transfer your smart home. For example, if you move out of like a rental or you sell your house, you buy a new house, then the previous tenant can share the Matter network to get your devices on, maybe like, with a few clicks, and then like remove its own fabric, and then you have access like to that without having to set up everything. So and this kind of flows still are like in progress, right? So who knows how it's actually going to work in the end, but the core technology is there, and we are also going to show this in our workshop later. So the second part of our workshop, we're actually going to create a second Matter fabric, and then have our ESP device that is a Matter Lite going to be part of both fabrics, and you can control them. So that will be very cool to see. Right. So, hello, Matter. Goodbye, everything else. No. So, you do not have to throw away all your old stuff. In fact, you shouldn't, because if something works today for you and for your use case, definitely keep it. Home Assistant, of course, we work with all the protocols, so there's really no need to throw anything out. I think you will have enough thread border routers in your house that your Matter network will have a stable mesh connectivity soon. I mean, obviously, like this will happen with as you get more devices in your home. Um, and the other reason why you shouldn't fully bet on Matter yet is that the supported applications is fairly limited, because all the other parts are so complicated just to get right that I don't think they want to commit to a lot of devices right from the start. So I think there's around like 20, 25 devices in the version 1 they expect it to be. So yeah, for example, you cannot measure your energy usage, which, for example, in Home Assistant is a big feature. But if you are going to buy something today, or in the next, like, from now on, basically, if it supports Matter, it is your best bet to avoid vendor lock-in, because Matter is a local API, and even a device that has a cloud-only API might support Matter as the local API. And the reason we know this is that because we saw this with HomeKit. For example, the Ecobee thermostat, it has a cloud API only or HomeKit for local. So I think a lot of devices will start adding Matter, and then that will be your way to make sure that you can keep using it even if the vendor goes out of business. And to make this transition to Matter easier, they're actually adding support for a bridge to Matter. So this kind of bridge IDs, bridge nodes as they call it, allow vendors to expose light bulbs from a different network, let's say a Zigbee light bulb, to expose it on the Matter network as a Matter device. It doesn't have to be a real device. In this case, it's a real device, but it's not a Matter device. So this is actually how both IKEA and Philips Hue will allow you to keep using all your Philips Hue light bulbs and IKEA light bulbs, which are Zigbee, but you will be able to control them through Matter, because their hubs will do that translation step for you. So, for example, today we have an IKEA integration in Home Assistant. Well, maybe we might not need that one in the future, because we can just talk Matter to IKEA. Now, I do expect that vendors will start adding features that are not part of the Matter spec, so we can't always use Matter. We might have to use still their native API. For example, Philips Hue has a lot of these entertainment-specific APIs and these kind of things. So, we will still talk locally with Philips Hue over their API, but it's a local API, so I'm not too sad about it. Next slide.
Yeah.
You want to do this one?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, this is how the Matter implementation is in Home Assistant. What Paulus earlier said, we based off the official Matter SDK basically. The official Matter SDK is written in C++. And so what we did here is we basically wrapped that official SDK into an add-on. That's the Matter Server add-on you see here. And expose it via a WebSocket to the thread border, to the, well, that's actually a bit confusing for me now. Yeah, so now we expose it to Home Assistant, right? Yeah, via WebSocket. So, and Home Assistant, the Home Assistant core is where we have basically the other side, the integration, the Matter integration, and this acts then as a WebSocket client, basically talking to that server. Yeah. And besides that, we also have an add-on for the thread border router. So if the Matter device is on the thread network, it basically, this thread border router takes care of routing these IPv6 packages to the Matter server. But in the end, this is largely transparent there, right? It's just an IP network. It's just regular routing, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And as a Home Assistant user, this is the architecture that we're using, but you're not exposed to this, right? Just like we're going to follow the same approach as we do with Z-Wave. So, for example, in Home Assistant, if you plug in a Z-Wave stick today, or it will start the Z-Wave setup flow, or if you just manually start it, that's also possible. And it will install these add-ons in the background. It will keep them up to date for you. You don't have to know about add-ons. This is really just an implementation detail, but we wanted to kind of share how we've set this up. And the way we are building this Matter server is also not bound to Home Assistant. So the Matter server will, just like we have the Z-Wave.js server that we built around Z-Wave.js, will be agnostic of Home Assistant, so other projects can use this too. We've seen this with Z-Wave.js where other smart home platforms and scripts and people are just like hacking on it directly. They want to just interact with Z-Wave. That's great. You don't rely on Home Assistant. We always make sure that we build these like standalone isolated like packages, because if more smart homes start using our Matter server, it means that we'll have less bugs, right? They find more bugs, performance issues, they will submit fixes. And because in the end, for us, what is important is that we don't want to compete who can best control a light bulb anymore. That should just be a thing of the past. We should just, as Home Assistant, we want to compete with other smart home vendors because we keep your data local, because we have cool history, because we have the best automation stuff. Not because we can turn on your light bulb reliably every time. Like, everybody should just be able to do it. That should just be a given. Now, to get thread in Home Assistant, you need a thread radio. So one of the things that we added to Home Assistant Yellow is a thread and Zigbee module. So this is our second generation hub, Home Assistant Yellow. We crowdfunded this last year, at the end of last year, and we're actually going to ship it next month. The mass production has started off, and so the first backers will get their Home Assistant Yellows next month, and the other ones hopefully soon thereafter. Now, Home Assistant Yellow has a module with a radio that is Zigbee and Thread, because they use kind of the same frequency, and so it will be Matter ready. However, the way it currently works is that you can only set up the radio to be either Zigbee or Thread. It means that if you have an existing Zigbee network that you're controlling directly from Home Assistant, you would need still a USB stick with Thread to do that stuff. Well, that's kind of lame. So luckily, we're using a chip for this that is made by Silicon Labs. And Silicon Labs is a big silicon vendor, and they've been working on something very cool. What Silicon Labs is working on, they call it their multi-pan daemon. But what this means is that using time shifting, they will be able to run both Zigbee and Thread on the same radio. So this means that you can just use Zigbee and Thread and so Matter at the same time without requiring an extra USB stick. Now, this is something, again, that will run inside an add-on, so this will be fully transparent to the user, and they should be able to just set up Zigbee and Matter as normal. Now, this is a work in progress. We rely on this for source code or like from Silicon Labs. There is a general available release, just released like last week, but we still already found some issues, so we're still working on this. So this is not, if the people are getting their Yellow like next month, this will not be available. but we hope that we are able to make this feature available as soon as possible. I don't know, maybe like, well, I cannot really give an estimate because we really rely on Silicon Labs to fix these bugs.
Yeah, I think this is a cool thing, especially for new users as well, right? Then you don't need to have more hardware than necessary. You can run both systems.
Right.
Yeah, that's nice.
Now, you might be wondering, okay, what about Thread for other devices running Home Assistant? Well, we got something very cool to announce, and that is the Home Assistant Sky Connect. So the Home Assistant Sky Connect will have the same radio as we have in the Home Assistant Yellow. And this means that we will be able to run the exact same stack as we saw on the previous slide of doing both Zigbee and Matter and Thread at the same time in any existing Home Assistant installation. So this will work with the Home Assistant Blue, this will work with the Raspberry Pi, this can work with virtual machines, anywhere. So we're working on this. We do not have it a release date yet because, well, we are really relying on Silicon Labs. Once we are able to have a version that we can fully, reliably have running in Home Assistant and make sure that all the different parts work, then we'll be able to say when we're going to ship this. But if you are interested in the Home Assistant Sky Connect, we're actually adding a Sky Connect interest form. It's on homeassistant.io/Sky Connect-interest. We'll also add this link to the blog post about the workshop. And it's a really cool device, actually. I have one here. I'm just gonna, let me
It's
see.
not there all along.
Let me just, can I
Hidden.
remove, so I just, oh, hit this one. I'm just gonna, ta-da, we have one here. So yeah, it's just a small USB stick, small so it's not in the way. This is gonna be a place for some stickers with some serial information. Yeah, so this is, you'll plug it into your device and boom, you'll be able to do all the Matter stuff right from there. Let's see. So yeah.
I mean, for us, it's kind of good that it's the same radio, as Paul said, as on Yellow, right? So we can share or reuse some of the work we are doing for these two devices, basically. And yeah, that's kind of a nice thing.
Yeah. And we're going to make sure that the Home Assistant Sky Connect will be available worldwide. So we're working with like different distributors that are able to ship everywhere. All right. So this was our first part of this live stream. Let's try out Matter. Sorry, the first part was about Matter, where we looked at what Matter is, how it will work, Matter itself, how it will work in Home Assistant. Now we're getting to like the scary part, the workshop part. And I was realizing earlier today is that not only are we going to live demo experimental technology, we actually made the decision to involve all of you to also try out this experimental technology. So we have.
What can go wrong? What can go wrong?
So we've tried this out many times, repeated the steps, and sometimes still things go wrong. Not everybody we shared the instructions with was able to get it wrong, but we're gonna go over this. I just really, really, really want to emphasize this is experimental stuff. Every layer of what we're gonna integrate today is experimental. So the Matter SDK, also all of this stuff is open source, right? So we're really just using the Matter SDK as it is available on the project chip GitHub repository. We added there's a Python REPL that is built into that repository. That's part of the Matter SDK. We have built a Python Matter server on top, and we have created a client that connects to that server, and that on top of that, a Home Assistant integration. That's a lot of different layers, and all these layers are under active development, experimental. So if something is not going to go right today, right away, we're going to keep our custom component up to date and add-on up to date. So you can kind of follow along as we are progressing, as Matter progresses. And so, you can keep trying, maybe we'll add some more features, add some other devices. Maybe, hopefully, you might be able to get like a Wi-Fi light bulb with Matter in the future, and it will just work out of the box. Yeah, so the first step is to get the workshop instructions. We have pinned the instructions on top of the YouTube chat. It is also linked on the Home Assistant workshop website page. Or if you want to type it in, it is home-assistant.io/matter-june-22nd.
Yeah. So what we are doing next here, we basically go through these steps also here live on camera. So in case you don't have the hardware or it didn't work for you, maybe it helps you also to see it actually kind of going through it, right?
Right. So this is the wrong page. Let me just change that slide. Yeah, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, it's kind of what I started.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean exactly. So yeah, but what we have here.
you want me to share your screen, or you want to?
No, let's quickly go through this slide. Just what we have here. Yeah, so the goal is basically this is Home Assistant yellow, right? We have Home Assistant OS on it, and it has actually also a Bluetooth radio connected. I'm not sure if you can see it on the stream, but on this side there's a Bluetooth dongle in there because we currently need to.
Let me show it real quick. If I can see it. What can
Yeah,
go
no,
on?
I think it's fine. And
Yeah, we can.
yeah, so this is the Bluetooth dongle over here.
Yeah.
So we need to have that currently because we basically for commissioning we need to use Bluetooth and it needs to be on the device itself right now, right? And then we have ESP32s here, which we then try to
Oh, sorry, I was.
connect. Yes, it's all IP based. It's not in this demo there's no thread involved, right? It's Wi-Fi, so these are Wi-Fi, and yellow is connected through Ethernet to the same network. It needs to be on the same network because Matter relies heavily on MDNS, which is multicast technology, so it needs to be really on the same network.
Right, and so both these devices you see here, the left one is the M5 stamp C3, the right one is the ESP32 DevKit M1 ESP32 C3 DevKit M1. So both of these devices have Wi-Fi in them and Bluetooth. So Bluetooth we will use for commissioning, and we'll get onto your Wi-Fi network where Home Assistant and the Matter SDK will pick it up, add it to your network. Both of these devices, when we have them installed, they have a button on it. On the DevKit, it's the boot button. On the stamp, it's the big button in the middle. If you press it, you can actually turn the light on and off yourself by physical interaction. And this is great because then you can instantly see this reflected in Home Assistant, which I thought was a nice touch to show as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is a feature which just recently got added by a user called JMMB. So thanks for adding that. That's kind of nice touch. It's not in the official firmware, so we added that.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of like developers also inside our core development team, but also outside that have already found our work because all the stuff for this workshop we've been developing in the open. And we already see a bunch of contributions. So that's really cool to see that there's a lot of enthusiasm for this.
Okay, let's get going. Can you share my laptop screen?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So yeah, I just go through these instructions, right? We kind of have all the requirements set up here. So we already have the operating system installed and running. I have it, I'm logged in here. I'm on the latest OS version. I have the latest core version installed. And I also have Hacks installed, the Home Assistant community store, which allows us to easily install this experimental integration. That won't be necessary once we merge Matter into the main Home Assistant core branch, right? But right now it's kind of a separate, what we call a custom integration. And so Hacks allows to install that easily. So this we already prepared. Bluetooth we have talked about. Hacks I just talked about. The Wi-Fi.
For the Bluetooth, with the latest Home Assistant operating system, you shouldn't have to do any work. The moment you plug it into your Home Assistant device, if you have like a Home Assistant Blue, it should be automatically picked up and be ready to use by add-ons and the Home Assistant itself.
Exactly. And then here I have one device connected. When you have multiple devices, you need to be careful. They have the same kind of commissioning credentials, so you should only have one active at a time. Otherwise, it can get mixed up during commissioning. So this one is now the one I have active here.
So if normally if you buy a light bulb, every light or every device will have a unique pin code. But because this is development material, every device has the same pin code and identifier, which is great for your test cases because you can always set them up. But if you have two active at the same time, you don't actually know which one is going to get included because they both will respond to the same message.
To the same message at the end. It's really only because it's hard-coded stuff from development environment, basically. Okay, so let's get this going. So I use these MyLinks usually. So if you haven't just set up your MyLinks, so this is actually stored locally. So this is my local, the address of my local.
You want to just click on the pencil real quick to just kind of show. So my Home Assistant is this, because everybody hosts their Home Assistant differently of different URLs. My Home Assistant is this small utility that we created for Home Assistant users that will allow us to link to locations inside your Home Assistant instance without having to know your URL. So you store your URL in your browser. It's not transmitted to any server or anything. And the moment you click on any of these My Links in our instructions, it will link you to the right place in Home Assistant. So that will make it very easy, hopefully, to follow these instructions.
Exactly. So I just click on that first link and it gets me to the add-on store and adds a new repository. So I add the add-ons development repository here. I click add. That, depending on your internet connectivity, might take a moment because it needs to download this add-on.
Oh, slow down a little. We need to just we need to make sure people are following, right? So yeah,
it's good. Yeah. So so this is basically that first step here, right? So adding the developer add-on repository. It will be in the main repository at one point, but that's where it currently is. And this is the add-on we are going to install, the Matter server.
As you can see, there's a bunch of other add-ons also in this development server, including like a chip tool, chip controller REPL. We will go over the chip tool as well. These are just two different debug utilities that part of the Matter SDK to also create, and interact with Matter. So we'll go over that. You should also see the OpenThread border router. But yeah, we're going for the Matter server. We're clicking install. This means that your Home Assistant installation is now downloading the latest version that we published of the Matter server. And so, of course, in the future, this is all gonna go happen behind the scenes for you. So you don't actually see or have to go to the add-on store. It will just be part of the normal setup.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and once that's installed, we are going to start it. And so this is then just the add-on running in the background, basically acting as a server, WebSocket server, and exposing Matter functionality.
Yeah, so once it's installed, just hit start, and you're good to go.
Yeah. I mean, in the logs, you probably see how it will start up, but it's not that interesting right now, so that's fine. So next step, we need to install the Matter integration. So that's the Home Assistant core integration, basically, which talks to that Matter server add-on. So for that, we use Hacks. So I go back here to Hacks, go to Integrations, press on the three-dot menu, and add a custom repository. And the repository URL is basically this URL here. So I copy this URL.
We need to go a little bit slower, right? Like
let's paste it here. Okay.
So with Hacks, you add repositories, and it will actually be able to, from different GitHub repositories, install custom components. We generally do not recommend this for day-to-day use, because we always believe that all the integrations should be inside of Home Assistant. This should really just be for development, because otherwise you don't really know if it's valid or not, or how well it works. You can actually click on Matter Experimental now that you've added it.
I've already added it, yeah. Exactly.
Oh. Yeah, so once you add it, you will see that the new repository shows up, Matter Experimental. Clicking on it will load the information. We have not provided any information. We did the bare minimum to get it into Hacks, because it requires all this add-on and extra work, so we don't really, it's not going to be part of the default hacks setup. Yeah, click on the download button. You'll see version 0.1.2. We just created this, well, what is it? Like, we tagged this release 3 hours ago when we fixed the last bugs. And we're going to keep this up to date. So hacks will tell you in the future, hey, there's a new update. You can update the integration. Make sure you also update the add-on because they usually will go hand in hand. We'll try to kind of keep it in sync, but there might be some breaking changes. We're not going to be backwards compatible because this is all development while it's still outside of Home Assistant.
Exactly. So yeah, and once the custom integration is installed, we need to restart Home Assistant core. And the easiest way to do that is pressing C and just typing restart.
Actually, you don't need to restart. Lulius told me. It does say saying restart, but so we're gonna first try it without restarting, and then we're gonna show people how to restart. Just because, if it saves a restart.
Okay.
So yeah, let's go to settings, devices and services.
So we add it now, right? Okay. Yeah. So that is basically already this far. I know that we did.
No,
go to integration, add integration, Matter experimental, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we are doing right now. We go to settings, integration, add integration, and so Matter experimental appears, without restart.
Yeah.
Right? With this is right.
So before you set up this integration, make sure your add-on is installed and running, or else it cannot connect.
Yes, the add-on needs to be running at this point. Yeah, but we did that before, right?
That was step one. Nice. So if you skip step one, please do step one.
Okay, so wondering why.
Well, so now it's installing the Python PyPI dependency, and I think what is happening is that there's like 1,000 people trying this at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, how it works. Yes.
Yeah. So the URL that is set up here, you can use this, leave this as is. This is the internal Home Assistant IP address that is not externally accessible.
Yeah, of the add-on basically.
Yeah. If you're doing development, this is where you would put your own URL of the server.
So we click submit and finish, and there we go. So now we have the integration active here. And what this integration basically gives us at this point is access to new features, new so-called services in Home Assistant. And that's basically where we move next. But no, that's step 4. So this is now done, right? So we will then use these services in step 4.
Right, so this is great. Basically now you already have Matter set up in Home Assistant. That's it. So that's pretty good. But now, of course, you want to have something to communicate, to speak Matter to. So in the instructions that we shared previously, we said, please buy one of the ESP32 devices. So we're going to have you install software on it that will turn it into a Matter Lite.
Exactly, and we are going to use this DevKit M module here. So I opened that link here in a new tab, and I click here now. This is the DevKit M1. Yeah. I click the Lightning app, which is basically just simulates basically a light bulb, right? Yeah. It's just this LED then is supposed to be the light, and we have the boot button actually there configured to also turn off and on the light directly. At the light.
What is really nice here is that this lighting app is actually... Oh, can you wait with that second? Because otherwise they can't follow us. What's really cool about this lighting app is that this is part of the official Matter SDK. This means that the ESP32 is an official device, and every Matter test suite, every change to Matter will run through the test suite, will be tested against this ESP32 stuff as well. So basically, we're building this from source. We added some extra stuff ourselves so that the boot button toggling the LED is a nice touch. So yeah, but make sure when you are on this website, the lighting app is the one that you want to install, and make sure you pick the one for the right dev board, right? So if you have the ESP32C3 DevKit M1, pick that one. If you have the M5 Stamp C3, pick that one. The other two, those were just kind of used internally for like some development stuff. We might add more later, but we'll like tweet about this or whatever. So yeah, in this case, we're using the DevKit M1. So basically, you have to open Chrome for this or Edge. But yeah, then when you click the connect button, it will show you a list of all the serial ports on your machine. In this case, we're going to, there's one here called ESP32C3. It might be on your computer, it might be called differently. I think on Windows it can be called like a COM port. I think on a Mac it is like TTY USB. So basically, yeah, just hit connect. And then you see this menu. This menu has two options. The first option wraps around, it's not completely distinguishable, but the first option is to install the software on it. And the second one is to actually go into the logs and console and to be able to interact and send command line commands to the device. We'll get to that part later. But yeah, let's first do the installation.
So I click on it and then click install.
Yeah.
And yeah, this now really flashes basically the firmware onto that device directly from this website. Right?
Yeah, and the nice thing here is that we can do this over Chrome, so it's that's basically why we are able to make this possible today. This workshop is because it is this accessible.
So, yeah, and it takes, of course, a while now. I actually pre-flashed already the M5 stamp, but we're going to use that later. So we're going to wait until this is flashed here. And yeah, so the firmware up here on this site, yeah, what Paulo said, they are really built from the SDK. And right now we build them manually and upload them to the repository. We were also thinking about making that an automatic step so that we get new versions much quicker.
Right. And so if you are the biggest issue people will probably happen is that they will click on connect, they will see the list, but they do not see their device. Now, there are multiple reasons this can happen, and I'm actually gonna share some of those reasons. Let me just share my screen real quick. So this is the example installer app. And if you do not select a port, we actually have helpful instructions to help you go over it. So if you do not see your device, there's 4 things you make sure. First, make sure the device is connected to the computer that your browser is on. Don't have it connected to your Home Assistant server. It has to be the one that is running your browser. The second one, there is a small light that is being turned on when it's being powered on. Make sure that there's a light. The third thing is that we are actually sending data. We're installing software on this microcontroller. So the USB cable that you're using needs to be able to provide data. There are USB cables out there that are power only. If you have one, just throw it out. It is like, it's gonna mess. Every time you're looking for USB cable or something, just throw out power only USB cables. Make sure you only buy USB cables that actually transmit data. The fourth one, and this is kind of the biggest one usually, is that you do not have the driver. So depending on which operating system you use, Linux works out of the box. Windows and Mac, probably you need a driver. So this depends on the device that you're using. Actually, in the instructions of the instructions document that we shared, we link directly to the drivers for each board. So you don't have to install all 3 of them to make sure that something works. Once those drivers are installed, once you plug in the drive, the microcontroller connected to your computer, you will see it pop up again, and you should be able to install it.
Yeah, so the device is flashed, so we are good from the device side. Now we can also go into logs and console here just to see what's actually happening on the device. Yes.
So you'll see a lot of stuff being printed here. You don't have to understand it, but basically this is the application now that is running on this ESP32 device. So this is like, it's running, it is broadcasting over Bluetooth. Hey, I'm Matter, please set me up, set me up. It is not connected to your Wi-Fi because it doesn't know where your Wi-Fi credentials are, right? So that is going to be given to this device over Bluetooth in the next step, as we're going to send our credentials to it.
Yeah, so one thing we need to do here in the console is actually get the onboarding codes. And so I just use this command here, Matter onboarding codes BLE, paste it here, press enter. And so now this gives me basically what a QR code would show, right? So I mean, a regular device, I can quickly open this URL. So in this URL, so a regular device would have that QR code basically shipped with it, and you would use your phone basically to scan it, right? But
Right.
what behind this QR code is basically that string, and that string basically contains the pairing code for that particular device. So that Matter can set up a first connection to that device and really commission it onto the Matter network or the Matter fabric. Yeah, so that's good. That's all we need to do in step 3. So let's go to step 4.
This is the exciting part, right?
This
is
now
bringing
gets
everything
interesting.
together.
Now the question is, will it work? So we go to DevTools and services. So that's what I mentioned before. The add-on, the integration basically added new
Can we
services.
Yeah, before we continue, I just, I was scanning through the chat and I saw a person with an issue. Lisa Pierce is saying, I get an issue when I'm trying to install this add-on on my Raspberry Pi. It says it's not compatible. So Matter currently requires 64-bit version of the Home Assistant operating system. This is something we did not add to the initial requirements when we posted this, like the announcement, like 3 weeks ago. We added it a bit later, and we tried to share it as wide and spread as possible. Basically, any device that runs a 32-bit version, Raspberry Pi 3 or Raspberry Pi 4, is compatible with 64-bit. So if you are currently on a 32-bit today and you want to try out Matter, I know, in the future, you can download a backup, install the 64-bit version of Home Assistant, restore the backup, and you should be up and running in, fingers crossed, 30 minutes. So, but yeah, if you see this error today, Lisa, I'm sorry, you will not be able to install the add-on.
Yeah, new OS version.
Yeah.
Required, yeah. Okay, so I go back to this DevTools services. So, and in here there are multiple new services under Matter basically. What we are going to use is 2 services. First is the set Wi-Fi credentials. That's basically we tell our server what the Wi-Fi credentials of our network we are going to onboard this device to are, right? So the server needs to know that because it will tell it over Bluetooth to that device. So that is the first step now. I'm going to copy and paste that from notes I have on the side here. All is top secret.
Yeah. Still secret.
Password.
Right.
Still secret, yeah. And so I call this service. This goes quick because it basically just stores that information on the server side. And then the next thing, I mean, it doesn't store it persistently. That's actually important. If you restart your device or the add-on, you need to call that service again. So it's currently volatile, right? So it is just during runtime it's there.
Right.
And then the next step is the next service we are using is the commission device service.
Yeah. And careful when you click on this. There's 2 services. One is called commission device. The other one is called open commission window. We need to be, like, in the future, this is not going to be services. This is going to be like a panel. We're going to use the other service, open commission window, in a bit. But for now, commission device is the one you want to look at.
Yeah. And so here we paste the pairing code, and I'm not going to paste your IP now. So I need to go back here and copy this over here.
So this is really, if this was a real Matter device, this would contain a PIN code to set up the first encrypted connection, and then they can share keys to set up a stronger encrypted connection. And it has a small discriminator to kind of distinguish between different devices that need setting up.
So I click this, and it looks like it doesn't work, but it works actually.
Open the Matter example.
It starts to connect to it, and you actually see it in this console. Yeah. So what's happening now is really a quite involved step. It's like a 20-step plus a process. So it gives it the Wi-Fi information, right? That's the first step. I mean, set up an encrypted channel over Bluetooth. sends the Wi-Fi information to that device. That device then connects to Wi-Fi, and then it tries to find it over Ethernet and Wi-Fi here basically. So on the IP level, they try to reconnect again, right? So the first connection is Bluetooth, then the second is basically over IP network, and then it sets up the device further.
Yeah.
And
then the reason why you saw so many things being printed in the log is that what's happening once it's added to the Matter network, Home Assistant will interview this Matter device and basically tell me everything about you. Like, what kind of device are you? What kind of things do you support? And what are the parameters of this support? And what are the current settings?
Yeah, we have some errors here, but these are not really fatal. Also this one, I mean, some are from our interviewing process, which is not quite super nice yet, and some are just from the SDK still that they print some errors. But this seems to have worked when we end up with kind of a lot of green here and messages. That looks good. And the other thing which also shows us that it worked is that the device shows actually shows up. So when I go to overview here now, I have actually a new light, this dimmable light. And yeah, I think I should be able to
let me just
here.
turn on the, I'm gonna see if we can, wait, I wanna like put this like side to side. Yeah, so this is good. Yeah, so you can see now we're toggling this light in Home Assistant.
Yeah, and it, yeah.
You wanna change the brightness?
Can do that too.
So by default, the light on this dev kit is super, super bright. Definitely put it on like low brightness if you're like playing with it.
Don't stare into the light.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, so that works. And now we also have that boot button here actually hooked up. That's what I said earlier. And it will also then basically do the opposite. It will change the light, but it will also inform Home Assistant basically about that change. And this all works locally, right? That's a so-called subscription. And so Home Assistant now knows that the state of the light basically changed, and also shows it on the...
You want to go to the device info page?
Yes, let's do it. So if I go here, right?
Device, yeah, that works. Yeah. Right, so on this page, you can already see that for device info, we have queried some information that we're going to show here. Right now, we have like added Nabucasa's manufacturer, but this would of course be whoever is creating your light bulb. You can already see we know the hardware revision, we know the firmware version. Matter has built-in support for firmware supports distribution, so they're actually going to work on a database where people can upload their firmwares, and hopefully we should be able to tap into that to offer what is called firmware updates through Home Assistant, as we also, for example, work on for Home Assistant. Yeah, so just to show off like how Matter would work in Home Assistant, we are going to create a quick automation because why not? So you want to explain what you just did?
Yeah, I just basically defined this light. Basically, if that light gets turned on or off, that this triggers another device and turns it off. And
well, so then let's click this Matter button right here. Ta-da! The rocket ship turns on. Let's make it bigger. Can you show it again?
So yeah, it's toggling right now. Well,
yes, and instant, right? You see how fast it is? This is like, because Matter will just send it to Home Assistant right away, and then the rocket ship here this is a Wemo inside switch, so that goes over Wi-Fi as well. Right.
Cool. Yeah, I think that worked then. We're step 5 basically, right? Yeah, it worked.
Yeah, so if you got this working, this was the first main part of the workshop, just to kind of like, get it all working in Home Assistant. The second part will be the more advanced part where we're going to create a second Matter network and share our Matter device from Home Assistant into the second network or fabric so that you can see how a multi-admin setup would work. Basically, for Home Assistant, it's transparent. It doesn't know a device is in another network, but you will see that the state change, if I toggle the light from the second fabric, of course, a state change will go to Home Assistant as if like we would press that button in a way. Um, if you have something working and you're gonna want to share this on Twitter, use hashtag Matter in Home Assistant. We'll make sure to like retweet this to kind of like show all the Matter stuff that you got running. That'll be really cool. Um, and this is all local, right? And all this code that we saw today is open source. And so basically, if you're going to buy a Matter light bulb in the future, you can add it to Home Assistant, and it will just, no data will ever leave your network. So this is why we're really excited about this. And the adoption, we believe adoption will happen because Google, Apple, and Amazon, they're pushing a lot of technology that consumers are using, like the ones that they actually hold in their hand, right? Your iPhone, your Android phone, your Amazon speakers, those are all going to support Matter. So if you're going to be a light bulb manufacturer, which standard are you going to support? Well, the one that works with everything, right? So you're going to build Matter. And so all of a sudden, we're going to see, hopefully, a flood of Matter devices coming in that we can control with Home Assistant.
Yeah. Looking really forward to that. Yeah, so let's try this bonus round. So step 6 now is basically adding another add-on, right? And so this is now really a pure kind of development add-on. It's called Chip Tool, that add-on, and it basically replicates another Matter controller as an add-on. So it is inside Home Assistant, but it is not connected with the Matter server or with Home Assistant in any way. It's just we just created an add-on for it for ease of use. But think of it, it is basically like its own Matter controller, its own Matter controller. And what we want to show here is that, like, if you have a second system, and that might be a Google or Apple system, but we don't have those today, right? So we cannot use a Google system right now. So we use that basically as a kind of a replacement. And so I'm going to install this chip tool now and start the add-on. So the chip tool is basically a command line utility which is a part of the Matter SDK. So when you compile also the Matter SDK on a Linux system locally, basically as a developer, you get that chip tool as well, and you can use it also from there. And this is just like a pre-built version from the same Matter SDK we are using to build the server, but it's a separate add-on. Okay, so once this is running, we get a terminal basically, and in that terminal we will be able to enter chip tool commands.
Did you show the terminal?
Yes, so now it's installed. I actually enable to show this in the sidebar, so I can go to the terminal by just clicking here, but I need to first start the add-on. So now the add-on is started, and then I can click on chip tool, and now I have a console. And yeah, so when I enter chip tool, it shows a lot of possible options it has.
Chip tool is used for a lot of testing as well on the Matter SDK, and also by different vendors that are integrating Matter. So it literally has every option that you can think of in Matter is available through the chip tool.
I think it's also used in the certification process, from what I understand. So when a Matter device vendor basically certifies a device, they use this tool to basically run tests on it. Okay, so we have that running, and then the next thing we need to do is basically put that device back into what is called commissioning mode. So right now, I mean, at the beginning it used Bluetooth to commission, right? To commission it to the first fabric which we run with Home Assistant. Now it's no longer in commissioning mode. So via Bluetooth, it's no longer communicating. So how does it even work? How can you add now a second fabric or a second network to it? And the way it works is that from the existing system, so the system which already basically paired with it, you need to tell it to go into commissioning mode again.
So if we, what we explained earlier is that Bluetooth is being used to get the device connected to the IP network. That can either be Thread or your Wi-Fi network, but once it's connected there, then it can just talk Matter directly. So that's what's happening here. We don't have to get it connected to Thread or Wi-Fi. We just have to get it connected to Matter.
Exactly. So now I choose this other service called Open Commissioning Window, right? And I select here the that device basically, and call service. So this uses still the Matter server, or our kind of Home Assistant Matter implementation, right? To put this device into commissioning mode on the IP network. So it then will be on the IP network already, but it is again commissionable. So I call that service, and so that actually activates a timer, which I think it's 5 minutes. So after 5 minutes, this device goes out of commissioning mode. So we're on a clock right now, but it's 5 minutes. It's okay. And so what we do next is we use that chip tool command to basically pair that or connect that device to a second fabric, right? So I go to chip tool and I paste this command here.
So the second part you see there is the pin code, but of course that is hard coded now, right?
Yeah. The second part is the pin code. The first part is actually the so-called node ID. So I give it the node ID of 2323. Well, that could be anything really here. We could also do 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, let's follow our guide.
Okay.
Right, otherwise.
And so what you see, there's a lot of things going on, and if I have gone to the console, also a lot of things.
You go scroll to the bottom there. The console of the ESP Web Tools wasn't at the bottom.
Okay. Yeah, true. Yeah, so here it basically commissioned now to that second fabric.
Right. So this is cool because now we have a device on our desk which is connected to Wi-Fi, which the credentials have got over Bluetooth. It is talking to both the Matter server, which is connected to Home Assistant, and it's connected to the chip tool, which it is running on the same device as Home Assistant, but it's a separate Matter network. So you're going to have two Matter networks now together.
Maybe just a small side note, chip tool is quite stateless, so it now kind of set it up. It has the state in this add-on, but chip tool is no longer running, right? But it's fine. That's just how chip tool rolls, basically.
Yeah.
And then, so this now is commissioned. So now we can control the device from that second fabric, again using chip tool command. So I copied this command.
And so basically what this command does is that it will talk to the on-off cluster, which is what represents the state of the light being on or off, and then it toggles it.
Of that node ID 2323.
So before we hit enter, make sure you keep an eye on the desk cam on the left, and the moment we hit enter, we should be able to see it pop up. I guess we cannot see Home Assistant at the same time. Yeah, so you see the desk cam showing that the LED is running. If we now open the Home Assistant UI with that device, you see it's also on, right? So
yeah, so if I do that just toggle again.
You go really, there you go, you can see it. And of course, the moment the light turns off, you can see that the Wemo Insight switch turned on with the Rocket chip, right? So actually, this is a good test. If you open the chip tool, we're going to toggle this light now on the ESP chip, and when that happens, and it tells Home Assistant that it has changed, it should turn off the Rocket chip, which is turned on right here. So let's give it a shot. Yeah. There you go. And this almost happens all near instant because everything what is happening here is push, right? The chip tool talks to the device. The device instantly lets Home Assistant know something has changed. The Home Assistant automation engine runs, sends the signal to a Wemo Insight switch, which this is not Matter. This is just a complete different protocol, but Home Assistant abstracts it away and you can run that automation.
Yeah, so basically what happens is really that device state, like the on-off cluster or it is really shared between these two fabrics, right? But those two fabrics are really independent network. Underneath, actually, Matter creates separate certificates and separate encryption keys, basically, to form separate networks.
Yeah.
So these networks are even encrypted with different keying material and are otherwise really completely separate. It's just the state of the device which then is kind of shared.
So everything in Matter is always encrypted. You're not able to see what is happening inside a Matter network unless you are part of that network. Unless you're the controller, you can see what's going on. But for example, if you will have a Google network, an Apple network, and a Home Assistant network, we cannot peek and see what kind of device you have in your Apple network or your Google network because that's just all encrypted. Yeah. Which is also great if you have roommates, you share your Wi-Fi connection with other people, you can still have your own Matter network on it without, people dropping in.
Mm. Yeah, I think that this is a lot of the promise of Matter also, right? It's privacy and it's also, encryption is really required for that as well.
Yeah.
Right? Even in a local network, you want to have it encrypted.
So let's see this was basically the workshop. This was...
Yes, yeah. I mean, we could pair a second device, but I don't think it's all that interesting. It will work the same way.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm seeing... I'm looking at our... So basically at the end we have some instructions. You scroll a bit up. This is for just resetting everything. So basically, this is all very fragile. We actually got it all working today, like flawlessly, which is like pretty impressive. But I think that if something breaks, most of these things should kind of like recover. But if it doesn't happen, here are some instructions to kind of reset everything. So we earlier saw today how to get the onboarding codes by typing in the terminal of your ESP32. There's another command called Matter Device Factory Reset, which will unpair, it will forget all the fabrics, and then you can commission it again. Devices inside Home Assistant in Matter, you can actually click Remove Device to remove all devices. Now, if you really just want to remove everything and everywhere, you can reinstall the software on the ESP from our web installation page. You can remove the config entry. Creating a new config entry will always create a new state for your Matter network. If you uninstall the add-on and reinstall it, it will also forget all the keys that are stored in there. The state is a little bit fragmented, but basically uninstall, remove everything and start over, and you should have a clean slate.
Yeah. To really reset the device, this command is required here. So Matter Device Factory Reset in that console here so when I would enter that one here, it would really reset the state of the device, right? And then both, like the chip tool as well as the Home Assistant Matter fabric can no longer talk to it. One thing which...
before we leave this page, can you type Matter Help? So this is a whole command line tool that's running on this microcontroller that has a bunch of functions. So whenever you type Matter Help, it will print out all the available options, and then you can actually expand on that. So you can, for example, type Matter Wi-Fi Help, and it will get you the subcommands under Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. Now, if you are interested in following development, we will be pushing updates to the custom integration updatable through hacks. We will be pushing updates to the add-on updatable through the add-on store. If you are interested in development, everything we talked about today is open source. We have a new channel on our Discord server called Devs Matter, where we will talk about Matter development. We already have some people that are very good in Matter, so we can go really deep into all the nitty-gritty details. The Zigbee devs are probably also hanging out there. They know a lot about how the Matter application cluster and subscriptions work because it translates so well from Zigbee. So definitely come hang out if you want to help with development. Mm-hmm. We are also going to be as Nabukasa at the Alliance event next week, and we hope that some more cool news will come out, which we'll definitely share with people. Stefan is going to be there. I sadly have to miss it.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if we should if there are questions or something we should open up, but I think from
our members, we can take a couple of questions if there's. I see a lot of questions that are getting answered as we, by other people as they were being asked. I saw some question about how do sensors work with Matter. Well, those would be using thread, so they just would wake up either from every 30 minutes saying I'm still alive, and of course, for example, when it detects motion, it would like fire like, hey, motion changed. Things like this.
Yeah, maybe thread is actually a good point. That's one thing I was thinking to show quickly. So we have Matter with a thread also working. We just decided to not do it for this workshop because people don't have. I mean, it's a bit more involved to set up, and people don't have thread networks really readily available, right? So, but what it actually changes a bit, it's not that much different to onboard a Wi-Fi device. One thing which is different is instead of setting the Wi-Fi credentials here, what you need to do is basically set the network operational data set. That's what
it's a fancy word,
name. Yeah.
But basically, Thread doesn't have a Wi-Fi password that you configure yourself and share with your friends. Instead, one is being automatically generated and shared with Thread devices as you onboard them through like your phone.
Yeah, it's basically a long string which contains more or less the network name as well as the encryption keys and whatnot. And so when you have a Matter, now it goes a little bit deep maybe, but our OpenThread border router will then basically hand over these credentials to Home Assistant, and then these are then, like with Wi-Fi, basically transmitted via Bluetooth to onboard a thread device. Yeah. Right. So we have that already working, but we don't show it here.
Yeah. I saw some people mention about what about ESP Home and Matter. The Matter API, the kind of devices you can control, is very limited. So ESP Home can do a lot. It has like all these features, and that's why it has its own API, which is natively integrated into Home Assistant. So it's also over IP. So we don't see right now any added benefit to add Matter to ESP Home. And I think that's it for it. I think we are very optimistic about Matter. I think it will be a big boost for I think we'll get very cheap light bulbs. I think we'll get very cheap switches because basically you don't have to worry about the software anymore. Software stack is being taken care of by this open source reference implementation. And it's really, really cool to be, we're part of the Slack with like all the people working on the Matter stuff. And it's super cool to see all these like companies actually provide engineering resources like full time. They're just working on this and they're working on this together. And not having like a closed implementation, but being able that, the fact that we're going to run the same code as Google is going to run, that's just a big deal, right? That just means that we have the same connectivity experience as the other platforms, and we can really all start competing on the cool stuff that we can build on top, right? Because with Home Assistant, we spend a good chunk of our time integrating APIs. If we do not have to spend that time on integrating APIs, but instead can build better logbooks like we've done in the past release, but like there's so much more stuff we could actually do around that. So we're really stoked about Matter, and well, we hope you're too. I think the last thing we didn't mention is when is Matter going to be out? Who knows? I think the current estimated schedule is a fall release, so that devices can get on the market, and then like the Christmas shopping can all be like Matter light bulbs or something. Yeah. So, if you want to run Matter in Home Assistant, either if you have an existing installation, you can use the Sky Connect. Once again, you can get we will let you know. We have a Sky Connect interest form available. I'm actually, should have put it on the page. But anyway, there's an interest form, homeassistant.io/Sky Connect-interest. You can also find that link in the Home Assistant Workshop website on Home Assistant. Or, of course, the best thing you can do is get a Home Assistant Yellow because, well, it helps fund their work and it will also work out of the box with all this cool stuff. So, yeah,
that's it.
Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great afternoon. And, if you want to see some other cool stuff that we've been working on, not the two of us, but other people, we have another live stream tomorrow starting at the same time, same location. It's about music in the smart home, and it's also going to be really cool. So, cheers. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.